Greetings, gentlemen. You can look at this video as a kind of rejoinder, a reminder of certain things. Now, I'll be posting a link to an article, and obviously you can see the picture, you can see the chart. That's what we're going to talk about. But this article is supposedly about the shocking checklist for picking up women posted online by American dating guru who ministers want banned from entering Britain. This was earlier this month. This Julian Blanc. And honestly, I don't really care about the incident itself. As many of you know, I'm neither a fan of pickup artists nor am I an advocate for them. So I don't know the details of that, and quite frankly, I don't find the details all that interesting. Although, if I were to hedge my bets, this idea that he's actively advocating violence against women, it's probably a bunch of bunk and hobo. But yeah, who knows? It doesn't really interest me. What interests me is the chart. Now, as many of you know, I'm a strong advocate for a hands-off policy when it comes to dealing with women. That is to say, I don't interact with women at all beyond what I need to do, ordering coffees occasionally or the store. I don't date women, and I try to avoid any sort of real contact with women. And there are good reasons for this. But we can see this in this chart. Now, I am titling this video, as you know, 50 Shades of Abuse. And I want you to just look at some of the things on this chart, some of which are, of course, legitimate, and some are absurd beyond all measure. And we can do this clockwise. So let's first look at use coercion and threats. Make threats to hurt her. Obviously, that's not a good thing. Make her drop charges, so on and so on. Then it says, threaten to leave her, to commit suicide, to report her to welfare. I'm not really sure what the welfare thing is about. That's interesting. But so apparently, if you break up with someone, if you leave someone, that's violence. That is abuse. Use intimidation. Make her afraid. Smash things. Yes. Okay. These are all legitimate. Display weapons. These are all legitimate. Use emotional abuse. Put her down. Make her feel bad and guilty. Call her names. Humiliate her. Make her think she's crazy. Play mind games. So all this is just very vague and yeah. Use isolation. Control what she does. So on and so on. These are all muddy waters here as well. Deny, blame, and minimize. Make light of the abuse. So make light of, I don't know, her feeling bad that you didn't like the spaghetti that she cooked. Not take her concerns seriously. Say abuse and say she caused it. Actually claiming that she has agency. That's abuse. Use children. Make her feel guilty about the children. Use the children to relay messages. Use as if women didn't do that. Threaten to take the children away. Use male privilege. Be the one to define men's and women's roles. Make all the big decisions. Treat her like a servant. Act like the master of the castle. I don't even know what that's about. Is that a role playing thing? My favorite one is use economic abuse. Prevent her from a job. Prevent her from getting a job. Well, how could you prevent her from getting a job? I'm not sure. What are you going to shackle her? Make her ask for money. How can you make her ask for money? I don't understand that either. Do you? Make her ask for money? Give her an allowance. Not let her know or have access to family income. Take her money. So here, this is probably the crown of crowns, right? So you're supposed to give her your money, but you can't take her money. So she can take your money, but you can't take her money. Interesting. Well, this chart is just chock full of all sorts of absurdity and nonsense. We know this. Power and control. And some of it, as I said, is legitimate. Obviously, smashing things and displaying weapons and destroying property and abusing animals. These aren't good things. But I'd say most of it, the majority of it, is a bunch of bunk and silliness. And it illustrates well the ability to manipulate the facile mind, particularly of women, and men's response to it. I mean, I often say we cannot bend reality to our will. Reality is what it is, but we can influence people's minds, and this is what this does. There's such a broad spectrum of possible abuse cases and incidents based on something like this, and I'm sure there are other charts and other means of gauging quote-unquote abuse, that is no longer possible to really know what's right and what's wrong. The waters are muddy, are dank, dark, and you can't see clearly. Now, many of you might think that this only applies to a marriage, and of course, certainly it can apply to a marriage. It could also apply to a quote-unquote serious relationship, but I am a strong advocate of hands-off in its totality. Let me tell you why. I'll give you one example. This is a real-life example. Years ago, when I was still living in NYC, I had an acquaintance. We chatted reasonably frequently, and he worked in a building for a different company, mind you, but in a building, the same building as a woman that he then went on 2 dates with, separated by several floors, mind you, but they didn't work for the same company. He went on a date with her, didn't have the best impression, decided, I'll give it one more try, one more, and then after 2 dates said, no, I'm just not into her, and she's really weird, and whatever. And he was nice about it and said, he just didn't think that they worked well, whatever. She was apparently rather offended by this. Offended, women are always offended. And a little while later, there were rumors in the office that he had sexually harassed her. And not even though they worked on separate floors. I mean, news spreads like wildfire. And he had a really hard time. I actually lost contact after that with him. I don't know what happened, but I can't imagine things got better after that. And this was just casual dating, the thing that many MGTOW advocate. Just date casually. You see, women always have this card. They always have this ace in their sleeve. They can turn reality, in a sense, into what they want it to be by saying, well, he harassed me. And everyone perks up their ears and starts listening. But let me give you a more potent metaphor, illustration of my point. This is completely imaginary, mind you. But hear me out. Your best friend, your closest friend, guy you've known for decades, you trust him with your life, your back, and everything in between. Well, imagine if this guy has under his watch a little button. Now, this button, if you should so choose to press it, would basically explode you to death. You just blow up. He can blow you to smithereens. He just needs to press the button. Of course, he would never do that. He's your best friend. He's he's got your back. He's always been there. He's not the kind of person, but for whatever reason, he's required to have this watch, and he has this button that he can press, and he can explode you to death at any given moment. What do you think the nature of your relationship would be? How would it change? This is, of course, the gun in the room argument I'm making, and it's not that you don't trust your friend. It's just that no one should have that power. No one should have that ability to do things. And your trust, I would argue, would soon wither and decay rather rapidly if he had that ability to press a button and just instantly kill you. This is about potentialities, of course. And whether it's likely or not isn't the question. The question that you have to ask is, what can someone potentially do, and what can they get away with? In the case of the imaginary scenario, I've explained it to you. He can just press a button, you can die. It doesn't matter if you're 99.99% sure that he's not going to do it. The possibility nonetheless exists if it's not 100%. And yeah, you can argue that this applies to everything, crossing the street, cars and runaway motorcycles, and yeah, this is all true, all true. But these are clear-cut things, and largely things that are unavoidable. You eventually you have to leave the house. Eventually you have to cross the street. You have to go to the supermarket. You have to do these things. All true, all true. But the thing about this abuse issue and the possibility and the potentialities is it is the gun in the room. Surely many women, perhaps even most women, wouldn't engage in these sorts of activities. They wouldn't level these sorts of charges. They wouldn't take advantage of a society that already kowtows to them and their whims. Perhaps many of them wouldn't. But they nonetheless have the power. This, of course, was the original argument against, I mean, there are many other arguments against marriage, but against marriage, that they have that potential. Many men who would otherwise like to get married, and I am not one of them, as you know, marriage in itself is anathema to me. They use the gun in the room argument, and it is a potent argument. And I'd argue here that it stretches, or rather expands beyond the boundaries of marriage into also casual dating. You don't know what can happen. I mean, she comes back and says that you raped her, even though nothing ever happened, or encounters are then misconstrued or misinterpreted. So we're talking about potentialities and the potential power that women can wield. And the best way to keep yourself safe in this regard is a hands-off policy. A hands-off policy that just doesn't involve being involved with women. Now, people can call me extreme, and I've said before, I am extreme. But I honestly believe this is the safest policy in a world where you have to deal with things like this. I mean, not let her know or about her have access to family. Okay, that's for marriage. Give her an allowance. Make her ask for money. How can you make her ask for money? Use male privilege. I mean, these things are taken seriously by people. This isn't a, I wish this all were a joke, but it's not. It's quite serious. And there's no reason to be involved in this. That is, to allow yourself to be involved in this. Just let it go. Whatever cheap thrill I might get from, say, casual dating or your minimal interaction with women, it surely is not worth the potential harm you can suffer from things of this nature, right? All you need to do is flinch the wrong way, and with the wrong kind of woman, you can end up in a bad situation. And of course, you have the grand advocates like Stefan Milieu and others who say, well, you have to get to know them, you have to filter all of this, and well, maybe that's true, but in the process of getting to know them and filtering them and trying to figure it all out, maybe it turns out she's already a bad apple and you're already dead. Or at the very least, fucked up the goat's ass, as I like to say. And this is just simple. It's why I have a strong advocate for a hands-off policy when it comes to women. And yeah, this is obviously just my opinion, and I know there are MGTOW that disagree with me. But I think it's looking at things like this chart that give you an idea of just the full panoply of abuse and possibilities of being basically set up and fucked over. It's just not worth it. It really is just not worth it. It's not a question even of likelihood. We don't know ultimately how likely any of this is to happen. It's a question of, your best friend who's got that button on his watch that can just blow you up any second. Nobody should have that power. And rather live in a dream world, it's better to live in reality and be aware of these things. That's all I got to say on this topic. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.